Hello and welcome to the MatchDay Review podcast with myself, Aidan Christa, and today we're doing the project rebuild of Paris Saint-Germain, and I am of course joined by Lewis Hall. You okay, Lewis? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, Aidan, apart from just introducing yourself then.
I was getting round to you, calm down.
He's in with his spiel, introducing the podcast with myself, Aidan Christa. Like, oh, you're just doing it on your own today?
I could hear you, I could feel you going, and you forgot to say my name. I could hear you in the background waiting to say.
Yeah,
I was getting there.
Yeah, I'm not too bad, Aidan. Missing football, but I feel as though it's as good as can be given the current situation. I think it's helping a lot given that we're getting a lot of good weather in the northwest of England at the moment, this moment in time.
Well, I was thinking about that. Would you rather, given the situation we're in, have the good weather, or would you rather it be raining every day so that you'd look at it and go, well, I wouldn't really be out anyway?
Much rather it be good weather like it has been, because at least you can sit outside, you can do the weights outside, do a little bit of workouts outside because we can't get to the gym at the moment, and it just makes things a hell of a lot more bearable because you can go out for a walk over the fields. It just makes everything a lot nicer when it's nice weather, and I can't stand the rain.
Yeah, everything's better in the sunshine. If we could have it all year round, I'd love it. Unfortunately, we live in the UK, so we get it 3-4 weeks a year, if we're lucky.
I thought you was going to say 3 or 4 hours a year then, because that's what it's been like the past few years.
Okay, so today we've got another project rebuild. You can tell that there's no actual football being played by the amount of these we're pumping out. And we've gone over to France. The first one we've done in the French League, actually. Probably the only one I'd say as well, is Paris Saint-Germain. And as a football club, they're a bit of a weird entity. Because we were going through this, and I think we both came to the conclusion that they're not the most liked team in world football. They're, but they are one of the richest, and they have got some of the best players in the world, which is just an odd combination.
Best is a bit of a stretch here, and I think
Neymar's pretty good.
Yeah, some of the most marketable players in the world. It's just they're a football club that's very unlikable as a neutral or even as a fan like I am of Manchester United. It's just a club you epitomise Paris Saint-Germain with tacky showmanship, or it's full of mercenaries. It's very tacky as a football club. That's the best way I can put it.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I felt like this. I mean, and I say I felt like this for a while. It's a case of they haven't really been. We ever go, you laugh at City for not being a club until 2009, 2010.
I think that's a bit harsh on City.
But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
People didn't really take them seriously till the takeover. And then I think the same is similar with PSG, except for they aren't in the Premier League for people to take them a bit more seriously than perhaps they should do. And obviously, showings in Europe in recent years have hardly
set the world
pushed
alight.
them up. Yeah. So it's a case of before the takeover in 2012, Paris Saint-Germain they were just another team in France, and the only thing that I would really associate with PSG was Ronaldinho.
Yeah.
Before he moved to Barcelona. And other than that, there's not much you can say about them. There's not a lot I think anybody in world football would tell you about PSG before 2012.
No, they were a bit of a non-entity as a football club. I remember growing up as a kid, I used to play FA Premier League Manager. 01-02 was a phenomenal football managerial simulator. Or even you played Championship Manager or the early mid-2000s football managers. And Paris Saint-Germain were one of those teams that were always a bit of an oddity for me growing up, because they were a club in a capital city, and Paris is a massive city in Europe, and they were the only club associated with such city who weren't a force in Europe or had been a force in Europe. It was though they were a bit of a non-entity, much like a Stoke City of the time, were a team that had finished mid-table and were quite pedestrian and formulaic, apart from, like you say, having Ronaldinho in 2001. I feel as though they were ripe for someone like the Qataris to come in and take over, given that they were primed to be such a marketable club, given that they were the only club of any note in such a glamorous city like Paris.
Yeah, I think that's probably what attracted them to buying PSG, is the fact that they were this team in one of the major cities in Europe and across the world. and you just never heard of them. Like if you think of other teams, the teams from London and the over here in the UK, obviously Arsenal, Chelsea, Tottenham, they roll off your tongue. Capital city in Spain, Madrid, obviously you've got Real, and it's just a case of you think that these are prime teams to be taken over and marketed across the world and across their own country. But before 2012, PSG were nowhere near the team they are today, and the French league itself actually was quite
unique.
Interesting might be a stretch, but was competitive at least. The year that PSG were taking over Montpellier had won the league, with a certain Olivier Giroud being the league's top goal scorer that year. And they had 4 different winners of the league in 4 years. So in that way, the league itself was probably better for PSG, maybe not being where they are now, I suppose.
No, but it was also a league that a team could finish 16th one season and then get off to a decent start in the following season and go on to win the league. It wasn't unheard of for teams to yo-yo from the bottom of the table to the top of the table year in, year out, apart from that Lyon side with Juninho Pernambuciano, a young Karim Benzema, the one that used to get to the latter stages of the Champions League between 2006 and 2010. But since then, it's become the age-old saying I use, a farmers' league. I don't know about you, Adam, but I feel as though it's just an inconvenience for Paris Saint-Germain at this moment in time.
Yeah, so the owners come in 2012, and PSG have won every single league title bar one since then. When that Monaco team with people like Mbappe and Bernardo Silva beat them to the league title in 2017. But yeah, you say a farmers' league. It reminds me a bit of international football. In that, you know, when England play San Marino in a European qualifier, that you know they're going to win by a lot of goals.
Yeah.
And goals make football games exciting, but England can beat San Marino 6-0, and it's just, you'd be lucky if people were watching it. Whereas at the French League, you know full well that Paris Saint-Germain are going to rock up, win 4 or 5-0, and then go home and do it again next week.
Equating it to international football is a very good analogy here, and because if you look at it, take England for example, you can imagine England going away to a Montenegro or a Kosovo, who are a lower ranked team in European international competition, and drawing 0-0 or drawing 1-1. And you can equate that to Paris Saint-Germain drawing against Dijon. Then you look at it, they could play against England, for example, could play against Italy or Spain. And that is Paris Saint-Germain against Monaco, where you would expect England playing at Wembley to win most of those games.
I think even England v Italy is a bit of a stretch in the French league, especially now. That Monaco team that won the league in 2017 was a fantastic team, but it didn't last very long. It was immediately picked threadbare that summer when the majority of them did move to Man City. But you had people like Mbappe, he was cherry-picked as the best of the bunch, and he went to PSG as well. So it's a case of if you threaten them even just a little bit and put the pressure on, that team would just get picked apart.
Yeah, because that Monaco team was a very well-constructed team. I know they had a lot of money thrown at it at the time, because I remember James Rodriguez had played for them, and they'd spent the money on Radamel Falcao from Atletico Madrid. Like you say, you don't ever think of Paris Saint-Germain being ripped apart because they've not got those players that, outside of Neymar and Mbappe at the moment, are actually coveted by any club in European football. You couldn't imagine a Marco Verratti signing for Juventus or Manchester United. You couldn't imagine a Thiago Silva going to one of the massive clubs in world football outside of AC Milan. You couldn't imagine a Presnel Kimpembe signing for anybody but Bournemouth. It's just a weird club. I know I was having a dig at Kimpembe there, but I'll never forget it. And we'll
get back to that.
When he put that arm out, one of the fabulous nights in Manchester United's recent Champions League history.
But you mentioned Thiago Silva there. Obviously, he came from AC Milan. He came at the same time as Zlatan, didn't he? And was it a case of... I mean, Zlatan is one of, if not the biggest mercenary in world football.
A phenomenal footballer, though.
Yeah, absolutely. But, available for the right price. That AC Milan team was... It was on a downward slope already at that point, but then you lose Thiago Silva and you lose Ibrahimovic in the same summer. And that team almost, it's fallen off a cliff, and sad to see now that AC Milan are nowhere near where they used to be, especially where I remember them being. Is it a case of those two seeing what was happening and jumping ship to the highest bidder at the same time? It just happened that the highest bidder was Paris Saint-Germain at that time, who had a bit of ambition and a lot of money to spend.
Possibly they saw that the golden era of AC Milan at that time was coming to an end, but for me at that time it was a weird one when Thiago Silva signed for Paris, because he was arguably the best centre-back in world football at the time, and you could imagine him joining Real Madrid at that time, going on to Barcelona, or even coming to England, because he had that rugged nastiness about him and could organise a defence and put his head where it hurts. At that time he was very comparable to Nemanja Vidic, but had a lot more pace than Vidic. And for me, it was as though he'd put the alright, I don't want to be ambitious or competitive sign up on his career at that point, because he was never again linked to a top tier club once he joined Paris. And I think for Zlatan had exhausted all his options really, because it didn't work at Barcelona. He really wasn't the Premier League at that time.
I think the Premier League really knew about Zlatan at this point.
No, but also
people didn't believe he could do it in a big team in a big game, especially after what happened at Barcelona.
Yeah, might have been that. But what I was going to say, the Premier League then was very, even more so than it is today, was just very direct and pacey, whereas today there's a lot of teams that play a nice conservative tiki-taka type football and just pass it around and knock it through to a striker, and you got number 10s like Bernardo Silva who put the ball around the corner. And I think the Premier League back then was far more pacey and could have swallowed Zlatan, as mad as that comment may sound. And it's just for Paris, like I say, it's just a weird club even to even think about a world-class player signing for, even today.
Yeah, it's strange, but since they got taken over, they have coveted one trophy and one trophy only. They can win as many Ligue 1s as they want, as many Coupe de France's as they want. French League Cups, which I don't even think is a thing anymore.
Yeah, they got shot of it.
But there's one trophy that they desperately want. They spent 8 years trying to build towards, and the closest they've come is the quarterfinals, and that's the Champions League. And I think is where the comparisons to City get even greater, because I think both these teams are on a journey to the Champions League. They've both got incredibly wealthy owners, and they're trying every which way to win Europe's big prize. And I think the competition has looked at them and said, no, you can't buy this competition.
Don't think you could ever buy the Champions League as a competition, Ed. But, and I'll get into this as we go on, where we talk about it in a moment, but I feel as though the comparison with Manchester City is Manchester City have built with money organically, put a footballing structure in place and done it step by step, whereas Paris Saint-Germain have done the kid at Toys R Us who's got £500 to spend, just run in and throw everything in the trolley that he might like and see if it works. I mean,
Manchester City, I think, have done a much better job with the money they've got than PSG. I think the PSG have kind of, I think I like the analysis of going to the Toys R Us and just buying the biggest toys on the top shelf, and it's not worked for them. I think City have taken a step back and realised what it actually takes to build a football club. And the money has kind of just given them a foot up and a boost in the direction of building a club, whereas PSG, I think, are desperate to build a team that will win the European competition rather than one that can sustain itself.
Yeah, it's the thing with the Champions League, Ed, and we touched on this in the Real Madrid project rebuild we did last, was that it takes a few years of having a structured plan to organically grow a team to win the Champions League. And I feel as though Paris Saint-Germain just haven't quite got that, in terms of you have to accept it's going to take 4 years of buying the right players, bedding them all in, to then have a shot at winning the Champions League. And I think that's where they come unstuck.
Yeah, every year it seems to be PSG try and buy this one superstar that will be fix everything that they think is wrong with their team in the Champions League. When Neymar came in, it was a case of, okay, here we go. We've got Neymar now. He'll win it for us by himself. Failing to build the structure behind him to build a comprehensive squad that can take this competition by storm. Because as you've seen last year, Neymar was out of that round of 16 tie against Man United.
Yeah.
And that team, and not for the first time, fell apart under even the tiniest bit of pressure.
Yeah, and it's a strange thing to even think about, is that Neymar is the most, which way to put it, but he's the most one who'll have the fight and take the fight to the opposition in that team. Whereas when he was at Barcelona, you thought he was a luxury player who'd only turn it on when he wanted to. But that is the kind of mentality at Paris that Neymar stands out as the one who's willing to put a foot in. Because you saw that against Dortmund this year when he was putting tackles in and trying to drag the team forward when they were behind.
But I think that comes from his time as the superstar at Brazil, isn't it? You know, the World Cup in 2014 was very heavily rested on his shoulders. And we saw what happened the minute he's out of that team. David Luiz picks up the mantle and runs the ball into the back of his own net. So I think that leadership quality doesn't surprise me so much. It's just that, unfortunately, he comes with an awful lot of baggage to go with it.
Yeah, true. And I think you mentioning David Luiz there is one of the things, again, which highlights Paris Saint-Germain don't have the understanding and football knowledge in the club, because paying 50 million for David Luiz when they did was an absolute joke, Aidan. And it's just transfers like that have continued for Paris, and that's why they've never got anywhere. And it's only in the past 18 months have you seen them, since Leonardo has come in from AC Milan as the technical director, is the first time you've seen them go and buy players who actually can grow into a team, like Idrissa Gana Gueye, for example.
Yeah, and I think especially this summer you've seen a bit of a change in attitude, in that they're not spending £70 million here and there on individual players. They have gone and brought a bit more wisely. And you mentioned Idrissa Gana Gueye. I mean, even Ander Herrera on a free isn't the worst transfer in the world. He will suffice it as a squad player. And that might be things starting to click there. That, you know, the penny may have dropped at PSG, and obviously we won't find that out for a while yet. But this season's Champions League, they're in. Well, assuming it ever starts again, they are into the quarterfinals. They did get past Dortmund at home, and we joked that maybe the lack of fans in that game helped them a little bit.
Yeah, I think it. Yeah,
because, you know, we'll come on to it. We've seen it before. Those two games that everybody associates Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League with, that night against Barcelona and that night against Manchester United.
Yeah, and they were two very, very damaging results, especially when against Barcelona, because they played them off the park in the Parc-Des-Princes 4-0 in the first leg, and Barcelona looked out of sorts even in the new camp for the first 30 minutes. And then when Cavani had those chances, he had the golden opportunity where he hit the post from 4 yards, put another one wide inside the 16-yard box. That's new to me. 6-yard box. What dimensions?
Funny dimensions. Two very close lines together in that box.
But then, even when it was 3-1 and you saw they got the free kick and Neymar zapped, once that ball went in, Neymar zapped into the top corner. You just knew. And I remember watching it just going, they've got to lose here. Having an unassailable lead.
Well, I was sat there watching it, and I think at that moment in time, before that free kick went in, was it 3 minutes left, 4 minutes left?
I think it was 3.5 minutes left.
And Barcelona were 1,000 and something to 1 to win that game. And then that free kick went in, and I think you sat up and went, hang on.
Yeah,
because the commentators weren't that bothered at that point. They were kind of like, it was a fantastic goal. It was a case of they still need 2 more, and there's 3 minutes left. Like, it's a bit of a push. And then they obviously get that penalty, and then that's when it's a minute to go with the goals to get, and at that point anything's possible.
Yeah.
And you can see that, you know, the pressure has been really turned up on Paris Saint-Germain.
They couldn't handle it. It's that again, like you said. The best transfer they could make this summer is buying a psychologist. That's what you joke as we were planning this. And it's as though Paris, as soon as they turn the heat up to 11 and the boat starts rocking and rolling, it's a bit dicey. And, you know, they freeze.
Yeah, because that defence still had people like Thiago Silva in defence. And like you mentioned, at one point, he's one of the best centre-backs in the world. And yet they're going away on a European night conceding 6 goals.
Yeah.
Like, forget the fact that it's a massive comeback by Barcelona. That's still, they've conceded 6 goals in a European round of 16.
It's something Arsenal would do that.
And Arsenal get absolutely berated for it every time it happens against Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
Or Barcelona, take your pick, one either. But
let's just insert team here that has a half decent shot of winning the Champions League, and Arsenal will roll over.
But what one do you think would have hurt more in Paris? That one, which gives them the record for giving away the biggest lead in Champions League history, or being the first team to throw away a 2-0 away leg lead?
Or the United
against Manchester United.
The United one will have hurt, and that will left a scar, and I still think it has left a scar to this day.
Because that game was PSG. They were 2-0 up, and they were fairly comfortable, fairly good on for their lead at Old Trafford. I think they were rightly 2-0 winners. This was a Man United team that was alright. It had a resurgence under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, but had been awful for the majority of this season. It had a lot of injuries.
It couldn't defend, and Paris ripped us apart in the first half at Old Trafford.
And this Paris team, though, this was the one that people were looking at with Neymar, with Mbappe, with Cavani, with Di Maria. They were looking at this team, and this was finally the year that they would have got over that defeat to Barcelona, and they would prove to everybody that they could do it in Europe.
Yeah, because it was the worst Manchester United team in a generation. And it was even more so with the first 11, you could label that at them. But then, like you said, there were so many injuries, and we gone with effectively the under-18s team on the bench. And it was, for me, what struck me was when they were 2-0 up at Old Trafford, and the arrogance of we've just smashed Man United, walked all over them. We're a far bigger club because of one result now. And then they carried on in the media all the way up until the second leg. And then about an hour before the second leg, you just thought, they've got to bottle it again. And then when they made the mistake, Lukaku scored. And it was from there you knew exactly what was going to happen, even after Paris got one back.
It was almost as if they were setting the scene themselves because it was raining. The first goal came from a mistake. Lukaku rounds the keeper within 2 minutes, and it's 1-0, and you're thinking, okay, right, the conditions are good here for another Paris Saint-Germain upset. But then they got one back, didn't they? They brought it back level 1-1 in the tie, or in the game, sorry, and put themselves 3-1 up in the tie. And at that point, most teams would think, all right, blip over. Yeah, we can sit back a little bit again now because we've got that insurance goal that we didn't get, especially against Barcelona, and think, right, that's it. Job done. But they don't seem to be able to do that. They seem to carry on playing as if it was 0-0. Not that they were 3-1 up. Yeah, with an away goal advantage as well.
Because it was Rashford was the only one who was furthest forward for United, and he was picking the ball up in his 20 yards into United's half, and then he was taking people on it as though everybody was scared of making a challenge. Everybody was like, okay, yeah, see if you can beat us, see if you can dance past us, and put it past Buffon. And when United scored again, then you just knew with Paris, it was like, oh, any little chance United get here, and Paris will just roll over and let them walk into the next round of the Champions League.
It was a strange one to watch because even at that point, Di Maria has his goal disallowed rightly for offside. Mbappe rounds De Gea and hits the post, or was it he can't get past Chris Smalling? I think they hit the post in there at some point as well. And then there's obviously the handball scenario at the other end with Kimpembe.
Oh, what a moment, Eden. When Delors, he got that, because we was watching again, we was like a bit on tender, it's like we just need one chance, and then he was getting to a point where it was like, oh, United are playing awful here, because we weren't a very good team in that second half. And the analogy for me would be that United it was too early for them because there was so many young players, and then you see Delors pick the ball up there, and it was a pot shot, and watching it on first glance was like, what are you doing? What is Kimpembe? Yeah, what are you shooting from there? But then when Kimpembe went up like he did, it just looked foreign. It really did look as though you don't defend like that. And then it goes then to VAR. You see it as a clear handball, moves his elbow to the ball to block it, and it's only Paris Saint-Germain who could do something like that.
Because if you watch that shot from Dalot, I'm sure it's going over anyway. It's not It's not troubling Buffon, so there is no need to put your arm out like that. And I think that PSG just tried so hard to lose this game.
Yeah, but it was the way he handballed it, and it was that, that chauvinistic arrogance where it's like, I'll just stick my arm, mate. We are Paris Saint-Germain. They won't say anything to us. We'll get away with it. And then it was just when Rashford, because I don't think I took a breath for about 5 minutes at that point when it was a penalty, and they did all the antics trying to unnerve Rashford, and then you just knew Rashford was going to smash it in the top corner because he had more bottle than all that Paris Saint-Germain team put together.
Yeah, you see the picture of Neymar on the sidelines, mouth gaping, just disbelief that this team has thrown it away again.
Yeah.
And you'd think of all the people to expect it to happen, it'd be Neymar.
Yeah.
Because he was the one that inflicted that pain on them the year before.
That was a couple of years before.
In that Barcelona game. Was it? I'm sure, was it?
No.
Was it 2 years before? Either way.
2 years, yeah.
Neymar was the one that inflicted the pain then for Barcelona.
Yeah. But
I think it came down to, there was almost like forensic analysis into it the night of and the morning after in France and even over here.
Yeah, because Neymar,
everyone just thinking, how's that happened?
Neymar went absolutely apeshit at the referee, didn't he, in the referee's room after the game. He got
banned for it. Didn't he?
He got suspended and fined pretty heavily.
In his continual quest to not play for Paris Saint-Germain.
Yeah, it seemed like that at that point. But it's again, you saw going on to summer after that, and what Neymar had done the year before in terms of getting in. He got injured. Fair enough, players get injured, but it followed the pattern again of getting injured around the time of the Rio de Janeiro Carnival, and then he disappears for a month because it's his sister's birthday. That's the old adage about that one. And then since then, he was like, I'm not coming back that year, heading into 2018 World Cup in Russia. And you just knew it was like, he's treating Paris Saint-Germain as a second fiddle, and they're the only club in the world who could be dictated to by a footballer, Aidan.
I'm not sure about that. I think player power's definitely got a lot more these days. But
yeah, I've never seen that where a player goes, all right, I'll phone it in the rest of this season because I'm concentrating on playing for Brazil.
But then at the same time, this is a man who cost him £200 million in the transfer market. He is the pin-up boy of all pin-up boys for Paris Saint-Germain.
The point I was coming on to then was Paris Saint-Germain, if they want to become a mainstay superpower in European football, should have put the foot down with Neymar last summer when he was flirting with Barcelona, being openly honest that he didn't want to play for Paris Saint-Germain and he was trying to engineer a move. They should have just been, all right, mate, you want to go. And it's just, I think it came down to the fact that no one else in world football wanted to touch him, and Barcelona don't have the finances to fund the deal.
Yeah, it's definitely come at a wrong time for him. And when we talk about it in the when we're researching this, he is that scene in Anchorman where Ron Burgundy jumps into the bear pit and he just stands there and goes, I immediately regret this decision. And that's kind of the feeling I get when he was at Paris Saint-Germain holding that shirt up going, bugger,
I've made a terrible error.
This has happened. They didn't give me a new contract. Like, it gets to the point where you're too far in that you can't then back out.
It was the fact they exercised the €222 million release clause. No one had ever in a million years thought any club would ever exercise one of those top-end release clauses that are by law in players' contracts in Spain. And it was as though like everybody was in complete disbelief at the transfer until it had happened. I don't know how you felt.
Well, I didn't think it would happen. As simple as that. Every time one of these rumours that pop up and you go, yeah, well, that'll never happen. Like, why are you writing about it? But even then, you trigger that release clause. You don't have to move. I mean, I remember when Anzi in Russia, I would try and pronounce the second part of that name, but I'm not going to embarrass myself.
Makachkala. Yeah. Anzi Makachkala.
Had all that money and they were buying, they had Samuel Eto'o and players like that. They triggered Messi's release clause a couple of years ago, and he didn't even entertain it. Like, they came to him and said, right, we've triggered your release clause. How much do you want? He went, no, I'm not coming. Like, you can turn around and say, I don't want to go. And that's if someone's prepared to pay your release clause, it just baffles me that there was a saga around the release clause, because once the release clause is triggered, that's it. There shouldn't be a transfer saga about it at all.
Yeah. I don't know, though, because for me, I don't know if Neymar was 100% wanting the move. I think he wanted more money from Barcelona, and I think he was ill-advised by those who are in his inner circle, particularly agents and advisors. And they are, as seen with a transfer from Santos to Barcelona, they all had their fingers in the pie in terms of having a financial incentive to put Neymar in Paris. And I think it was the fact that a lot of other people stood to gain a lot of money around Neymar from this deal that ultimately forced him into doing it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because it clearly wasn't for footballing decisions. Reasons, one of them.
No, I understand what you're saying. And, you know, a lot of the news around that move was about Neymar's father as well. And it's clear that, like you said, with the situation that happened when he moved from Santos to Barcelona, that the money involved, not only for Neymar himself, but for his team for getting this deal done, provided a massive incentive for. And if you're advising Neymar and someone says to you, you can earn nothing, well, you learn what you're earning now because he's at Barcelona, or if you convince him to come to PSG, we'll give you X amount of millions. You're not bothered where he's playing because you're making millions of pounds, and you're probably not even living in Paris. You can just go live somewhere else.
Yeah, and it also was the fact that there was all this talk of, he moves to Paris Saint-Germain and he finally comes out of the shadow of Lionel Messi and becomes a front runner for the Ballon d'Or. And
he's never been further away.
No, I know, and who's advising Neymar that not playing for that Barcelona team that scores hundreds of goals a season, is in the latter stage of European competitions every year, would have a better chance of winning the Ballon d'Or. The Ballon d'Or has been contested by two players for over a decade, outside of Luka Modric winning it after the World Cup. And it was as though people were filling Neymar with this false sense of he was better than he was. Because I'm not disputing Neymar as a world-class footballer, but he's not ever going to reach the levels of Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi for the simple fact he hasn't got the work ethic to match those players.
And even if he was to put up those sort of numbers, 50, 60 goals a season in the French League, there will always be that asterisk next to it.
That it's the French League.
It's in the French League. And it just seems so ill-advised when you look at it as to why, and I'm sure it would have sold him on the Champions League project, and you're the final piece of the puzzle that will get us there. But again, you're at Barcelona. There's probably one other club in European football you're looking at that time who has a better chance of winning the Champions League than you do.
And that was Real Madrid.
And that's Real Madrid, yeah.
But again, if you even look at it outside of the footballing aspects of it, you feel as though Barcelona was sick and tired of all the soap opera that came around with Neymar, the fact he had a massive entourage all the time. And I feel as though Paris Saint-Germain are a club who will openly accept entourages and hangers-on around the players instead of keeping them solely focused on the task at hand, which is winning football games and getting better as a team. Yeah,
and I think with all this money that's come in and buying players like Neymar, there has been a massive push on the commercial side for PSG. You see they're almost trying to become this cultural product in Paris and abroad. I think that they're particularly trying to market themselves towards the American market with kit deals with Jordan Brand, and they've had lifestyle wear with Bape, and you see celebrities at their games.
Ninja,
that streamer
the
was
Fortnite
there
guy
for the Champions League. You've seen people like Kendall Jenner turn up at the Parc-Des-Princes, and you think they have no interest in football. You've paid for them to come and sit in your stadium and the cameras to find them to try and market yourself to the American market.
Yeah, and they're trying to tap into those, I'll use the term followers, of those people in the American market or in Southeast Asia or in Africa. I won't say so much Europe, because when football's very tribal in Europe and you support who you support. And it's as though Paris Saint-Germain were like, we'll become the Instagram club by bringing Ninja in, who likes Fortnite, or Kendall Jenner, or the basketball stars or Mark Wahlberg, people like that, and it's just not got a place in football for me, Eden.
Certainly not over here, but you've seen. I think Neymar ended up on one of the American chat shows. It might have been Jimmy Kimmel kicking footballs across rooftops and stuff like that. So it's clear that they've targeted America as this market they can attract, and by doing by putting Neymar at the front and saying, look, they will market him as the best player in the world because Americans probably won't know too much different.
No.
They've pinned him up there. He's a good-looking chap, so he makes a good poster. They've got kit deals with a massive brand a $1 billion brand in America. The kits they're good-looking. They have lifestyle stuff out, and people will walk around wearing it, going, "That looks nice," and because it looks nice, I'll support that team because I don't really know much about football.
Yeah, but do they support the team, Ed, or do they just?
No, they don't support the team. I think using the word followers is quite good. Actually, I think they follow the team, in that they might click them on Twitter.
And it's again, Aaron, that trying to Americanise European football doesn't sit well with football fans in Western Europe, because football is inherently, the top end of football, should I say, is inherently a sport professionally, that the pinnacle is Western Europe. And playing up to an American market and playing outside of meritocracy in terms of what you do on the field just hasn't got its place in football. Trying to become a superpower of a football club by what you can do branding wise, and we've seen other clubs fall in this trap as well, it doesn't sit well with fans of other clubs. I'm not saying the fans of Paris Saint-Germain because I don't really know much about them, but other fans don't like that club because of that. They become like a bit of a cesspit in terms of you want to smash them every time.
Yeah, and I think Paris Saint-Germain summed that up perfectly. In that, if it was, for example, say by some miracle, Paris Saint-Germain got to the Champions League final, you would pretty much support anybody else apart from them as a neutral if your team didn't make it.
Unless Liverpool were the other team.
This is why I said almost everybody else. There was always going to be tribal, like if Barcelona were in it, Real Madrid fans were obviously not going to want Barcelona to win it, United fans, Liverpool, and vice versa. But if it was Paris Saint-Germain versus
Juventus.
Atletico Madrid, Juventus, you're always going to want that other team to win the Champions League.
Yeah, and I'm not, with what I say about commercialising a football club, I understand that's the world we live in today, and teams have got to make themselves viable, particularly because of what Paris Saint-Germain have done to the transfer market, but we'll get on to that. But in terms of having more streams of income just than winning football games or TV revenue, I understand you've got to become this commercial entity, but Paris Saint-Germain have done it in terms of the influencer way, instead of building a history and building a culture of winning, like a Manchester United done at Real Madrid, even Liverpool, Barcelona, Juventus, Bayern Munich, you can name them off. It's as though they've tried to get into that club of historical teams by just waving an American Express black card and going, "Oh yeah, we bought our way into this club," and it doesn't work like that, Aidan.
Yeah, it's the most aggressive brand in football, in that they're not trying to become a football club, they're trying to become the biggest football brand that they can. And football does not work like that. As much as you try and make football about the money, and there's a lot of money in football, everyone knows that, it's not all about the money. Deep down in football fans, in footballers, in football clubs,
it's about the love of the game.
It's about the love of football. It's about the winning. It's about the team, the camaraderie, everything that goes with it. The money just happens to come on top of that.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it, though. They're an influencer club, not a historical club. They'd much rather have a team that is well known by YouTube celebrities or Instagram celebrities than have a team that is known for coming back from 1-0 down in the last couple of minutes in Nou Camp against Bayern Munich, or coming back to win against Atletico Madrid, to win La Decima. They don't have these milestones or the accolades that they should look to try and get, as well as building the brand, not, we'll just win the Champions League and everything will be hunky-dory.
Yeah, and I think the French League is worse off for it,
Very
because
much
of the
so.
way that PSG are going about it, because it's completely devalued that league entirely.
Yeah.
For example, like Manchester City, I know we've said about them, and the comparison isn't one-to-one, it's not direct, but they've come in, they've had a lot of money, they've built this club organically with the money they've got, and they've won the league 4 or 5 times at this point, but it hasn't devalued the Premier League because other clubs are still have the ability to go and win it and things. But in France, PSG is so aggressive and so much better than everybody else that league is almost not worth winning anymore. I mean, obviously it's the league. If somebody else was to win it, it would mean a lot to them. But to Paris Saint-Germain, it means nothing to them, to the point where they've devalued it so much that it's almost not worth watching anymore.
But we came on about this in the Real Madrid project review we did last, and I see a lot of similarities there, because you look at Real Madrid's constant obsession with winning the European Cup, rightly or wrongly, we spoke about that. But we said how Barcelona tried to annihilate Real Madrid in terms of winning the European Cup year after year. It's devalued La Liga. And you've seen that on steroids with Ligue 1. And you use the comparison of Manchester City. The Premier League is beautiful in the fact that you can't buy it. You've got to earn it. Granted, City could be accused of buying it, but you can't just buy a load of world-class players and expect them to win the Premier League.
When you look at PSG, they were bought out in 2012, and then the season after, they won the league immediately. City didn't win the league in that first year after the takeover. They didn't even get in the Champions League. They actually had to build up. They were in the Europa League for a couple of years. I remember Peter Crouch scoring for Tottenham at the Etihad to send Tottenham through the Champions League, and not City. City ended up in the Europa League.
Yeah. And
they've built up from there. They won they won an FA Cup before they won the Premier League.
Yeah, and it was only QPR down in tools with the fact they won the Premier League when they did. Because it wasn't as though they won the Premier League with 20 points in front. They won the Premier League on goal difference because QPR effectively sat on their asses in the last 5 minutes. And if they didn't win it then, you could see it could have easily been another 4 or 5 years before they had a chance of winning it again, irrespective if they threw another billion at it. Whereas Ligue 1, Paris Saint-Germain only had to go and sign something like, say in the French League now, if they got the money, they don't really need to go and sign Memphis Depay and Houssam Aouar, and you'd expect them to win it.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. And I think that, that is a real problem for the French league. Whilst Paris Saint-Germain might be very marketable, their league really, really isn't at this point.
And it comes back to the question, Aidan. Does this infatuation with the European Cup devalue the league when your biggest clubs in that league only care about that competition?
I think it's a different situation, though, for Paris and Real Madrid and Barcelona, because I think Real Madrid and Barcelona, obviously, they are two massively historical clubs. Real Madrid more so in Europe, Barcelona definitely more in the league. And I think there's that clash that it doesn't... I know we mentioned it devalues La Liga. It almost does in a sense, but nowhere near as much as PSG have devalued their own league. I think in a sense more that the European Cup maybe has devalued La Liga, whereas Paris Saint-Germain have devalued the league that they play in.
Yeah, probably the best way of putting it. Because with La Liga, there's still competition from 3 teams, and there's still competition from teams below that, like Valencia, Villarreal, Getafe, Real Sociedad.
Well, yeah, even the the Europa League, Sevilla winning it 3 years on the bounce. So the Spanish league has obviously got more quality in it. For 5 years, all the European Cups, both Europa and Champions League, were won by Spanish teams.
Until United won it in 2017.
Yeah, so there was obviously quality in that Spanish league.
Yeah.
Whereas in the French league, Paris Saint-Germain are the pin-up. They are the best that they have. And, they pack them off and send them off to battle in the European Cup, and then they fall apart as soon as the going gets tough. It's very French.
Very French, yeah. Yeah, it is that, though, with that, again, comes down to the mentality aspect of it. There's no grit, there's no fight, there's no determination in Paris Saint-Germain. It's all nicey, oh, I want to go and buy this handbag for $400, or I want to go and get myself a pair of Jordans for $300. I think that's where they're always going to struggle against a Real Madrid, a Chelsea, a Manchester United, even City, Liverpool, Barcelona. You can name all the teams you want. They'll always struggle there because when the heat gets turned up, which it always does in the Champions League, they can't handle it because they don't have these these players who are gritty, willing to put a shift in for the team.
Yeah, no, I understand exactly where you're coming from, and it's
they don't have a Darren Fletcher.
I do question if they'll win it anytime soon. This year, I suppose, getting past Dortmund is something. They're into the quarterfinals for, I think, only the third time, I want to say.
Yeah.
I'm sure they got there one of the year after beating Chelsea.
But this season's Champions League is a murderer's row of teams lined up to go and win it. Because you've got City have thrown everything at it this year, given that Liverpool have done what they've done. Atletico Madrid are probably the most underrated defensive side in European football this season. Juventus with Cristiano Ronaldo on his own one-man mission. Bayern Munich, the best team in Europe for me at this moment in time. And you've also got Barcelona and Lionel Messi, the window for winning the European Cup again is closing fast. So many teams that Paris would have to go through when the season restarts that I can't see them having an easy downhill ride at it. They're going to have to overcome some difficult patches against phenomenal teams.
I think that Madrid winning it 3 years in a row has only upped the appetite for everybody else, especially looking over at, obviously Liverpool are out now as well, and looking over at the City scoreline, they're thinking, okay, Liverpool are out, Madrid look like they're going out. And I think everyone's looking at themselves going, right, this is now our chance. So like you said, there is almost a stack of teams who are all queuing up to get out of this block and take advantage of Liverpool and possibly Real Madrid going out. So we don't know that. Don't know what's going to happen with the European Cup at all from this point. But I feel I would put Paris Saint-Germain very, very low on that stack of teams. I'd put City above them. Bayern Munich, Barcelona go above them. Juventus go above them. So there you go. There's 4 as a semi-final lineup you put before them. And they're in the quarterfinals already. So there you go. They're going out next round.
Yeah.
Should it happen? Obviously this is all if buts and maybes.
I think moving away from the Champions League, I think there's such an ill feeling, an ill taste towards Paris Saint-Germain because of what they did to the transfer market.
Yeah. I think that Neymar transfer has changed the transfer market so massively, so quickly.
Well, even the Mbappe one as well in the same summer.
Yeah, well, you might see that effect reverse a little bit now, given the situation that the world finds itself in. And teams have possibly tried to rein it in a little bit anyway. But for 2 or 3 years, the transfer market just went absolutely ludicrous as a knock-on effect of Neymar moving to Paris Saint-Germain.
Yeah, but it wasn't the top end of the transfer market that got really out of control. It was that lower middle end. We always come back to Gylfi Sigurdsson and Richarlison. Neither one of them were worth 50 million to Everton, but that's what Everton had to pay to get a decent Premier League central midfielder or winger with Richarlison. And then you see, just in January, Barcelona openly offering 100 million for Richarlison. Like, this is monopoly money at this point, Aidan. And it's caused a lot of teams, particularly lower down in top leagues in Europe and in divisions below them, to put themselves over leveraged to try and actually compete because of what Paris have done to that lower transfer market.
Who was the record signing at that point? Was it still Gareth Bale?
Yeah, it'd be Gareth Bale for 85.5 million euros.
Oh no, or was it Paul Pogba? Depending on where you read on how much he cost. I'm pretty certain it was Pogba at the time.
Anyway, it was top end of 80 million.
Yeah, it was 80, 90. It was nowhere near. I think Neymar was 220 million euros in the end.
Yeah, and Mbappe was 167 million. So that's
in the same summer.
367 million on 2 players in the same summer. And UEFA were the first at the point of the spear to always go at Manchester City for spending money. But City's record transfer is still only 61 million, and that was
Rodri, isn't it?
last summer. And I can't understand why Paris always get this free pass, particularly from UEFA with financial fair play, but also of everybody else who can't see what they've done to the transfer market.
The transfers were creeping up anyway, as you saw. But I say creeping up, I mean creeping up. You had it was Ronaldo for a very long time, and then Gareth Bale was that little bit more expensive, which probably wound Ronaldo up no end, like £3-4 more expensive. Pogba come in for around a similar fee, but for it to then double in the space of one transfer window, and then and I think people almost forget about Mbappe because 160 million is, if that was the one transfer on its own that had happened that year, for an 18-year-old as well, people would, I think, ask more questions. But because he came after Neymar had cost 220 million euros, it kind of gets pushed away a little bit. It kind of forgotten about just how expensive he was, and the fact that he's so young. I think maybe some people get confused that he might even be a Paris Saint-Germain youth product because he's been there for such a young age.
Yeah, because that Monaco team was a flash in the pan and only got to the semi-final. Because
you only really heard about him. I know I'd heard about him a little bit, but he really exploded in that game against City. And then, so what's that, February? And he was gone by August.
Well, it was gone by... The transfer was done in June.
So he really wasn't hanging around very long at Monaco.
And it was all the charade around Paris Saint-Germain in terms of, we're complying with financial fair play because we've loaned him for the first year for 60 million and then we're paying another 107 the year after.
They loaned him, and I think one of the most ridiculous stories I think I heard that year was that they had to then pay all the money. I think it was around January time, because the clause in his contract, so to speak, was they could buy him as soon as it was mathematically impossible for Paris Saint-Germain to get relegated.
But it's again showing that complete contempt and disrespect for European football, because they were like, we'll just do whatever we want financially, and to hell with the consequences for other clubs like Everton. And I always come back to Everton because the Gylfi Sigurdsson one's a ridiculous transfer.
Well, they spent a lot of money on a lot of bang average players in the last couple of years.
But it's even, you look at other teams like Seville, and you look even like Espanyol this year, who spent so much money at it and find themselves languishing in relegation zone in Spain when they're a constant mid-table team. But because they've had to over-leverage these clubs, because of what Paris have done to the transfer market, and Paris aren't alone in what they've done to, there's a lot of other clubs as well, but it's as though they've crippled the economy of football, and that trickle-down effect is destroying a lot of smaller historic clubs. Yeah,
and they've done it for very little gain as well. As we've spoken about with the Champions League, which is what they want. I think this year we've seen, and we mentioned it, we've seen a little bit of a change in approach to maybe spending all this money.
Yeah.
We've seen the rumours of Neymar going back to Barcelona, Mbappe possibly not hanging around forever. And
Cavani, they're not renewing his contract. Icardi's only on loan. They've gone, like you said, towards more industrious players who complement a team and do the dirty side and hard side of the game to then allow these luxury players to flourish, like Idrissa Gana Gueye from Everton for 25 million and a Herrera for a free transfer from Man United. And these are players who add legs and add a combative nature into midfield, which will add more steel to Paris.
But just so smart a business in that they are, they're now sniffing around for these free players like Juventus do so well throughout Europe. It seems every year they're getting world-class players on a free because their contracts run out. But Paris Saint-Germain seem to be trying to muscle in on this a little bit. No longer are they just buying the player on the back page for 70, 80, 90 million pounds. They're also looking in serviceable players. Coming from Manchester United on a free is a very good deal for any club.
Yeah.
And this is somebody with European experience. He's won the European Cup. Albeit the Europa League, with Manchester United. He's won the FA Cup, he's won the Capital One Cup, so he's won trophies. He's a combative midfielder, I think, with an underrated player in United's midfield. I think people realised that pretty quickly early on this season when he wasn't there anymore.
Yeah.
It's just these kind of deals that just show a smarter football club.
But that coincides with the fact they brought Leonardo in from AC Milan. And he was one of the brains behind building that great AC Milan team as he was finding his feet after retiring. And he has the affinity with Paris because he played there. But it's as though, again, what we're saying now, they've realised you need to build a structure around the football team to enable you to build a competitive team that can win trophies.
Exactly. And on that note then, how do we fix Paris Saint-Germain, if that's the right word to use? How do we get Paris Saint-Germain to resemble more of a football club and less an amalgamation of players and a lot of money?
Stop buying mercenaries is the first one.
You know, there's that fine line between world-class players that cost a lot of money and just players who cost a lot of money because of what they cost before, almost essentially.
Yeah. You've got to get the right blend of a squad in, and you can't have all these players who are only willing to play the game in the final third of the opposition. You've got to have players who'll track back, who'll put a tackle in, who can defend properly, who can head the ball, organise the defence at set pieces, willing to attack the ball when it's in the air, all these types of things. And it's not just a one-size-fits-all, let's go and buy the poster boy this year in football. You've got to buy, like you said, Yanda Herrera's on a free. You've got to then go and see who's the most underrated Premier League player at a team that's not at one of the big six. Can they go like Real Madrid do, go and pick out the best young talent in South America? You've got to have a bit of nuance and a lot of different approaches and a massive understanding of how football works across the world to allow you to get the right types of players that will build a great team.
Yeah, we had the contentious point here was the goalkeeper, and I was insistent that they had bought Keylor Navas.
It's been a revelation, Edwin.
In that swap deal that involved Areola going to Real Madrid, I was convinced that they bought him.
And it may or may not turn out that you may have been correct.
I may have got one
million,
right.
Yeah, 13 million euros, which is an absolute steal for Keylor Navas.
Yeah, it goes in again that last summer. Maybe something changed, a light bulb was maybe switched on somewhere at Paris Saint-Germain, because Keylor Navas is a fantastic goalkeeper. 3 European Cups in a row, 4 in was it 4? No, he wasn't there for the first one, was he? That was Casillas was in goal. I remember that year because he lost it.
When did he have the good World Cup with Costa Rica? It was 2014, wasn't it?
Oh, so 14. So the year of La Decima.
Yeah, and he joined in the summer after La Decima.
But a fantastic goalkeeper. We've questioned many a time why he doesn't start ahead of Courtois.
Yeah, it's a weird one for Real Madrid because of he was so successful as a goalkeeper there with the Champions Leagues they won, but also such a good shot stopper, and it wasn't a massive upgrade to get Thibaut Courtois, and maybe it was Real Madrid setting the plan in motion to finally bring Eden Hazard from London to Madrid and getting one of his good mates from the Belgian national team there was the catalyst for that. That's how I feel why they got him anyway.
Yeah, but so we skipped over goalkeeper and went straight to right back, and it seems a lot of teams in world football need fullbacks, and there are very, very few fullbacks around. So we end up kind of recycling the same players. I think we've mentioned Youssouf Attal before for quite a few clubs, but playing at Nice already in the French League. So Paris Saint-Germain, they know what he's about. Like we mentioned, if you want to be the best in Europe, you tend to be cherry picking the best players from your league. You look at teams like Bayern Munich. If you're only worth your salt in the German league, you end up there. So you'd imagine that a similar model would follow. So he would be a very good buy for Paris Saint-Germain. But there are also 2 Portuguese right backs in the Premier League currently, maybe not getting the game time they'd hope. One at Manchester United and one at Manchester City. And the first one is João Cancelo, which is another funny transfer that you scratch your head at when you look at it, moving from Juventus
to City,
costing 60 million quid, and a Danilo, and to sit on the bench behind Kyle Walker whilst Kyle Walker's off partying during lockdown.
But isn't it strange anyway? Why did Juventus want to get rid of him when he was such a good outlet in that team and he provided width and balance? And I understand they may have thought Danilo would be a better option for him. They may have needed the money to balance the books in terms of 60 million they got from City. But then to go to City as such an established football player in Europe, and Pep Guardiola's just gone, I don't fancy you at all, you're not getting in this team. And I think there's a player there, Ed, and you've seen it at Valencia, you've seen it at Juventus, and he'd thrive in a league where fullbacks aren't under pressure as much as they are in the Premier League, and I think he'd do well in Ligue 1.
Yeah, I think absolutely there's a player there. You saw it at Juventus, especially in that season. He was a fantastic player for them. And I think maybe this year off at City, might light something underneath him that makes him want to have a point to prove. Maybe going to Paris Saint-Germain, like where you said, the fullbacks maybe given a bit more room to roam. He can make a name for himself. Will be that challenge that he is looking for to get back to his best form and forget about his escapades in Manchester for a year.
And the one with Dalot as well, I think that is, again, he's not going to be tested as much defensively as he would be in the Premier League. You're not going to have the likes of Mohamed Salah running at you, Wilfried Zaha running at you, Marcus Rashford running at you, Heung-min Son running at you. I can name a lot of wingers who are going to put fullbacks under such pressure in the Premier League. But if you put him, because he is good going forward and he's got a good cross in him, it seems as though there's more of an attacker in him than there is a defender. And I think that onus on attacking football would allow him to thrive at Paris Saint-Germain. And he's also clearly on the way out at United.
Yeah, those rumours have really come about quite recently, haven't they? The Dalot wants to leave Manchester United. But moving into the middle then, the centre-back spot, you mentioned while we were talking about this, that Marquinhos is more of a midfielder these days than a centre-back. Thiago Silva surprised you by being 35 years old.
Yeah, I thought he was only like 28. So I've got a pretty bad conception of time, Adam.
Yes, we know that.
As I have with
your guessing of age of people is horrendous as well.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But we've highlighted two French centre backs. One that's been linked with them before from Barcelona. That was Samuel Umtiti. He was supposedly in that group of players that they could have cherry picked from Barcelona in return for a Neymar. It was a group of 4 or 5 players they sent them, wasn't there?
Most ridiculous. But it's again Paris Saint-Germain. And this is just coming off topic and the teams and players want to buy just for a couple of minutes. But it's only Paris Saint-Germain who you could entertain being in, or you can come and have a cherry pick swap deal at Barcelona. You couldn't imagine Barcelona going to Manchester City, Real Madrid. No, they're not going to go to Madrid, but you get the idea. I'll go to Juventus and go, oh, there's a list of players who don't quite fancy you, but we want your best one. Just pick a few. It's just so unfootball-laden.
But I think it's become apparent that he's not long for the new camp anymore. And I think he is already, he's a fantastic centre-back. You can't take away his ability that he's got as a defender. He's French, so that obviously helps going back to his native country. And you put 2 and 2 together, and it does seem very, very likely that one could happen at some point, even if it doesn't involve Neymar going back the other way. Yeah,
and it's not, these players we're bringing up as well are all players that are available and would dramatically improve this Paris Saint-Germain team. And what you say with Umtiti there, it's the fundamentals that he's a very good defender and he can read the game properly. And it helps that he's quite pacey as well. And I think it's again that defending aspect and someone who can understand how a game's going to progress or how an attack's going to progress. That'll help Paris particularly in difficult moments in the latter stages of the European Cup.
Yeah, and the other name is Dayot Upamecano from Leipzig. He is
linked with every club in Europe.
Yeah, but he's one of these players that if you think PSG are waking up to almost building a club as opposed to a team of mercenaries, he's a young Frenchman who is very highly rated in world football. He's made a name for himself in Germany, and he's one of these people that you would build around for the future.
Yeah,
and if you look at Jadon Sancho, he is a young English player who looks almost destined to return to England. And if you've got a young Spanish player, one of the best players in the world at that point, who's very highly rated, they will end up going back to Spain at some point.
Yeah.
And you think if Paris Saint-Germain want to be included in that conversation of European football, if there is a young French superstar out there in any position that one of the destinations he must be looking at is the best team in France.
Without a doubt, Eden. I can see the appeal for Upamecano, like you said, going to live in Paris. He's a young guy. There's also going to be that cosmopolitan aspect of it. There's a lot to do in Paris. He'll be marketed again, and you're going to see a lot more of these young players. What can a club offer them in terms of increase in exposure? Because there's such financial opportunities outside of the game now, rightly or wrongly. Whether we can do a podcast on that, whether the financial aspect is going to effectively cripple some of the best players in world football because their eyes will be taken off the ball. But I think with Upamecano, going to a Paris first before possibly going to the Premier League or going to La Liga, it'd serve him a lot better.
Fair enough. I mean, the world is his oyster if you read the papers.
Yeah.
Given that he has offers from all around Europe, but I just think that if Paris Saint-Germain want to be taken seriously as a European footballing club, their name has to be in the hat for a player like him.
Yeah, and I also want to bring up as well, when we're talking about the defence of Paris Saint-Germain, over the past couple of years, they've brought through a lot of good young centre-backs and good young full-backs that I think are on the cusp of getting some notoriety and recognition across the world in terms of what they're doing on a football field. And you can see it's as though they've seen what we've seen. There's not many good defenders about that you can go and buy readily available. So let's go and try and build our own, bring young players in and see what you can do with them.
Yeah, and that's something we've leveled at English clubs for many, many years now.
Yeah. And it might be that the players there for the future are already in the system at Paris Saint-Germain and we just don't quite know about them because we don't follow French football as closely as we do the English Premier League or La Liga.
Yeah, moving forward then up the pitch into the centre midfield spot. This is a position that's been a problem for Paris Saint-Germain for a few years. We mentioned they might slightly be starting to get it right with the players like Idrissa Gueye and Ander Herrera and people like that. But it's a position that they could definitely improve on. We've got a couple of names written down. The one that interests me is Lorenzo Pellegrini, because he's a name that I've seen linked with a few teams before.
He's like what I've been saying a lot of, and chew my words again, it wouldn't be a matchday review podcast if I didn't do that. He's one of those players, Eden, who he's very silky on the ball. He's got a picture in his mind before he receives it as what he's going to do with it. Reminds me a lot of Paul Scholes in terms of that ability to see a picture, not in terms of his footballing ability, because no one's going to touch Paul Scholes, in my opinion, as a midfielder. But he's got a good range of passing on him. He can start attacks. It's as though he adds that bit of verve and electricity into a central midfield, so then they start moving the ball about quickly in that Roma team. And again, it's one of these players young at 23 that you can see Paris building around, because he's going to become a established Italian international.
We've got also written down Soumare, who has also been linked with an awful lot of teams across the world. He was linked with Man United and Chelsea in the January transfer window.
Has he been linked with Juventus, Eden? Because that's usually a pattern, isn't it?
Was that Juventus? He was linked with a lot of teams in January, and the move never materialised for him. But again, he's one of these players that is a standout player in the French League that someone like PSG you would imagine would be in for, given that cherry picking the best talents from your league is usually what you see the best teams doing. And
he also adds that physicality and power that'll bring something different to a Paris Saint-Germain midfield that's dominated by diminutive players such as Marco Verratti.
Well, the fact that he's been linked with the Premier League so heavily kind of points towards his physicality, because you have to be physical in the Premier League, so to fit in there, you have to fit that profile of player, which I think, like you mentioned, players like Marco Verratti possibly don't have in that Paris Saint-Germain midfield, which is alright when you're playing against Dijon on a Saturday afternoon. Yeah, but when you're in the latter stages of the Champions League, you need a bit of bite about you. You're not going to get pushed over in midfield.
No, picking on Dijon a lot today, Eden.
It's like one of the most French names you could think of, though, isn't it, in the French League?
Yeah.
Maybe,
Gongomp, you can use that one.
Gangon, they're not in the league anymore. They got relegated last year.
Did they get relegated?
Yeah, so At least, well, I'm assuming Dijon are still in Ligue 1. I actually don't know.
Yeah, or Saint-Etienne, I know they are.
Yes, they're still there. But Dijon sounds better, and it's the type of mustard, so...
And I think the Soumaré one, again, would be a good footballing move for Paris Saint-Germain because it adds a different element that you'd need throughout a season in midfield. And you've always got to have a blend of different types of midfielders to be successful throughout the campaign. The type of player that we're going to bring up next is the one that Paris Saint-Germain had covered because he's one of the biggest faces in world football. He's got a massive brand behind him. He's a World Cup winner. He's French. He's a bit of a diva. And he likes all the showmanship and the glamorous and it all being on him. It's as though all signs are pointing to Paul Pogba returning to the French capital.
Yeah, we put his name down in a sense of it's one that you could see happening and you can make a case for it, but at the same time you can make a case against it.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that. There's a massive chance he realises that there's something special's being built at Old Trafford under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and he decides, all right, I may have rocked the boat a little bit, but I can fall back in line. I just feel as though more so than moving back to Juventus or moving to Real Madrid, if he was to leave Manchester, I see Paris as his only real viable option.
Well, I could see that if Neymar, or if and when Neymar leaves, he'd fill that void that they're looking for in terms of the marketing, in terms of the superstardom.
Yeah.
And he would, I think, carry that on his shoulders quite heavily as well. Like he would carry it quite well, sorry.
Yeah, that's what I was getting
and
at.
It might weigh heavy on certain players, but he would definitely pick up that mantle of dancing on Instagram that Neymar's probably left behind.
No one can doubt Paul Pogba's footballing ability, Eden. And I think he would always add something to any team in world football. And Paul Pogba with the right attitude, fit, getting rid of all the niggling injuries he's had. And I feel as though United will lose something when he leaves. But the player that would leave Manchester United to join another club is a lesser version of the ultimate Paul Pogba you would get if he was the star of the show and bigger than the football club, like he would be at Paris Saint-Germain.
Yeah, my one gripe, or my one worry for Pogba going there would be he would possibly find it too easy. And we always go on about saying, you know, you can't just switch it on and off like a light switch when the Champions League comes around.
No.
If he finds it too easy in the French League, and you know he takes his foot off the gas, and you end up with that 2018 Pogba versus Mourinho scenario in Paris.
Yeah.
He's going to hinder your team's chances in the last stage of the Champions League as opposed to help them.
Will the Paris Saint-Germain footballing hierarchy be a little apprehensive to get a player that clearly has his heart set on a move to Spain?
Exactly. One of those players that he'll move because he wants to move, and it's all that's available to him. But ultimately, you're not his first choice.
Yeah. And it's whether they want to do that dance again of being a stepping stone football club. And if you want to, like we said, establish yourself as a superpower in a European game, you can't keep accepting being a stepping stone for the giants in Spain.
Moving forward up the pitch again then. We're doing this on the proviso that we expect Mbappe and Neymar to leave fairly soon. I think Neymar before Mbappe, you might get another year out of Mbappe. They definitely won't let them both go in the same summer.
And also Cavani's leaving on a free at the end of the year, like we've said. And also Mario Icardi has said he wants to return to Italy. So there's going to be a massive void at the top end of the field for Paris Saint-Germain. But I think it's a positive for him if they do it right, because he can get players that will complement each other better than just throwing some of the best and brightest names in European football all together and hoping it works.
Yeah, and on that note, the striker position, whilst I've got him written down as an option, it wouldn't be obviously for a starting striker. It would be for a backup striker, which I don't know if he'd be too happy with, because I think that might be the problem for him at Chelsea. But Olivier Giroud, coming off the bench for a team like Paris Saint-Germain, I think wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. He's already France's number one striker. Very, very serviceable in European competitions, in league games to come and nick you a goal. And
Very
is a
good
damn
goal
sight
scorer.
better than Eric Choupo-Moting.
Giroud's been underrated, and he's one of those players that will always offer a goal threat. And you've seen it when he comes off the bench. He turns games for Chelsea.
Yeah, It does baffle me that they didn't want to use him. It surprised me that Arsenal got rid of him as well, because he's a very, very underrated striker. He hasn't got the pace and the skills that maybe you see on YouTube highlights, but he's got that innate ability to put the ball in the back of the net, which, if you ask me, is all you need from a striker.
He's very good in the air as well, which I think he'd have a field day in France.
Yeah, but turning our attention to starting strikers, you've got Romelu Lukaku written down.
It's contagious, Aidan.
Lukaku written down. No, Lukaku written down from Inter Milan. Bear in mind, he's only just moved to Inter Milan as well.
Yeah, but if you're saying it's a replacement for Kylian Mbappe, and you're saying Mbappe's got 1 or 2 years left in Paris.
True, yeah.
Lukaku's one of those players you don't see staying at Inter for 7-8 years. He reminds me of a Paris Saint-Germain player, because he'll turn it on. Because he's a flat track bully, to be honest with you. He'll score loads of goals against smaller teams and then go missing in big games.
Fair enough. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang then from Arsenal, he's written down as well. He's one of these that I think his time at Arsenal's coming to an end, but he's at the age where maybe Barcelona are looking elsewhere. I think they're looking at Inter Milan as well for a Lukaku strike partner.
I think it's
in Lautaro Martinez. Real Madrid aren't going to come knocking for him, I don't think.
No. I just think for Aubameyang, it's all converged at the wrong time for him, being the latter stage of a contract at Arsenal in the last 12 months. He's also the wrong side of 30 in an Arsenal team that's woeful at the best of times. And he's, like you say, there's the emergence of potential world-class strikers that can play at the top of the game for 10 years, like Lautaro Martinez, who's going to find himself on the Mediterranean shores in Barcelona. Eden, I finally got my geography right.
Barcelona might be a city, but it's not inland like you thought for many, many a year.
Yeah, it's a shocking effort, that. But yeah, Barcelona, it's like Madrid, isn't it? It's in the middle of Spain. This is when you went on holiday there, and he was like, "Oh, there's some pictures from the beach." I was like, "Barcelona's not got a beach."
That was on my way back to Madrid, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously, lived in Madrid for a year, so we went via Barcelona for a couple of days, and you were absolutely gobsmacked to find out that Barcelona had an actual beach in it. But didn't do you any harm, did it?
No, but I think with what I was saying about Aubameyang is you've seen the emergence of Lautaro Martinez as a potential world star for Barcelona, and Real Madrid have clearly got their eyes on a certain Norwegian in Dortmund, and they've also got Karim Benzema, who's a far better player than Aubameyang. And I just feel as though he's one of those players who wants to have a trophy or two to show for a career that has seen him play for Borussia Dortmund, seen him play at AC Milan as a youngster, and also at Arsenal now. And I think he'd set the world alight at Paris Saint-Germain because he's pacey, quick, and he's also a very good goal threat.
Yeah, and then the other one I've got written down is Heung-min Son from Chelsea. This one was a bit...
Tottenham, did
I say...
Yeah, it's definitely contagious now, Ed.
It's the heat, I'm telling you. It's above 8 degrees in the UK, so we're all struggling. This one was a bit of a strike, because he doesn't strike me as a Paris Saint-Germain player. But I can understand why someone like Paris Saint-Germain would be looking at him.
Again, brings that industry. Very direct, willing to commit a man. He'll also looking to take people on and dribble, which is a skill that is very, very lacking across Europe at this moment in time. And also, he's always going to pop up with a goal in a big moment, Eden. And we're talking about Paris struggling when the spotlight's on. Son's a player who always rises to the occasion.
Yeah, and maybe the fact that I don't see him as a PSG player now is the exact reason why he could or should be a PSG player in the future, if they want to get away from that stigma that they've been dumped with because of recent performances in Europe.
Yeah. The other side of that, though, is doing that deal with Tottenham will be an absolute nightmare. Absolutely.
No one wants to deal with Daniel Levy. But onto the left wing then, and replacing Neymar is going to be no easy feat. In fact, I almost feel like it will be like Barcelona trying to replace him, pretty much impossible.
But they've also got to learn from Barcelona and learn from even Tottenham when Gareth Bale left. You can't you got to accept you're losing a superstar and not try and fill the void of that superstar with 3 or 4 players. You've got to pick one player you believe can do a job, add an attacking threat, give some assists, also score a few goals, and accept you're never going to be able to, like for like, replace what Neymar brings to a football club.
I've only got one name written down. I don't know how many you've got.
I've just got one.
Lorenzo Insigne from Napoli.
Again, what we're saying about got that air of arrogance about him. Comes from Napoli, so he's always got the fight, got that bite about him, willing to do the nasty side of the game, put a tackle in and drag a team forward when they're on the last legs. We know the turmoil that's happening at Napoli with the chairman and the weekend retreats that he wants to take all the players on, and there's a bit of a mutiny going on there. It might have settled down now given everything that's going on in the world, but I could see Insigne wanting to chance his arm with a team that possibly is looking to progress to win the Champions League, and he'd again add something different to Paris Saint-Germain.
But he's got that pace. He's direct. He can cut in and score a goal on his right foot as well from that left hand side. So he's absolutely serviceable player. He strikes me as someone who could end up at PSG. He's not a world superstar, so I think he almost slip in under the radar.
Yeah.
But at the same time, be a very, very good player.
And
Rather than, it's not like Mariano coming in to replace Ronaldo as Real Madrid's number 7. Poor fella.
Yeah, but Real Madrid did that because they know what they're dealing with. Real Madrid used the age-old footballing tactic of let's give it to someone who's not in the limelight or will ever be compared to Cristiano Ronaldo. Because could you imagine if they gave the number 7 straight to Eden Hazard and signed him that summer?
He had this season.
Yeah, he had this season. He would never recover, whereas they've given it to Mariano, so the mystique and aura of that number 7 jersey for Los Blancos is removed now, and it's a clean slate for Eden Hazard to now build a legacy on the back of his own work, not trying to emerge from the shadow of Cristiano Ronaldo.
Or build a bakery, depending on what one he prefers.
I don't think Madrid will give him that option because they know what he'd choose.
Welcome to Hazard's Bakery just outside the Bernabeu.
It still is the best quote of quarantine and lockdown all across Europe, that I can't stop going to the cupboard because I can't stop eating buns. Eden Hazard, he is a legend, Eden Hazard.
This mental picture of this fat Hazard rolling back into training when the restrictions are lifted in Spain, and him being used as the ball in training.
Hopefully he gets himself right, Eden, because he's one of the best players in the world on his day.
Absolutely. But on that note, I think this one's run its course.
Are you not going to let me talk about my left winger?
Oh, you had somebody other than Lorenzo Insigne?
Yeah, I had Rafael
If you've got somebody else, you talk about Eden Hazard for far too long and bakeries, so...
Yeah, I had Eden Hazard. I've not got Eden Hazard. What's going on? No.
Right, okay.
Right, I had Rafael Guerreiro from Borussia Dortmund, the Portuguese international. Again, he's industrious, brings an air of quality when he's on the ball, willing to, because he was formerly a left back, do the defensive side of the game, but also he's got a wicked cross on him that he could put in to an Olivier Giroud or an Aubameyang to score a lot more goals.
Yeah, I think if you pick between him and Insigne, you're two different kind of players. It depends on what style, obviously. Paris Saint-Germain eventually go down the route of what they want. But if you've got, a target man, say someone like Giroud, maybe not Giroud, but someone like him, then maybe, Guerreiro whipping in those crosses, providing that service for the front men might be a bit more their style, as opposed to maybe someone trying to do it themselves, like Insigne. But we got there in the end. I didn't realise you had somebody else, so I just thought, we had the same notes. Clearly not. Never mind. Have you got anybody else before I...
No, we're all good.
We're all good now.
Thoroughly covered Paris Saint-Germain.
Yeah, I think we've done plenty of coverage on Paris Saint-Germain. It's been good though to look at it. They're a strange club. I think they're slightly different to maybe some of the teams we've looked at in the past.
But again, it's a club who's at a crossroads, Aaron, and they've got to make the decisions based on football, not on brand. If they want to win the Champions League, if they want to be a commercial success and rake in a lot of money, choose the brand side of it. But if your holy grail is to win the European Cup, you've got to kind of, like we said, they might be turning the corner with Leonardo and picking the right types of players to build a team. You've got to build a team, not a brand. That's the way to put it.
Yeah, there seems to be it's in a very similar boat to a lot of teams across Europe. But just before we go, don't forget to check us out on Twitter. The handle is @matchday_review. Swing over onto the website, which is under another rebuild to try and get multiple pages up. That's www.matchdayreview.com. Is the YouTube should be up now, shouldn't it, as well?
Yeah, the YouTube's up and running.
That's just that Matchday Review podcast on YouTube.
Just Matchday Review.
Just Matchday Review. Ooh,
yeah.
Got another different title on there. And then, obviously, if you can, don't forget to give us a like, a rating, and a comment on Apple Podcasts as well.
Yeah.
And if anybody in this lockdown is, looking for something new to listen to, please feel free to pass this on to them. Word of mouth advertising is just as good as anything you can put online. Anything you do would be much appreciated.
Yeah, share the podcast as geographical lack of geographical knowledge, should I say, and also Eden Hazard's track of between bakeries.
Like he's sat on Sims building bakeries while these buns are in the oven.
No, but he's one of those players, and you can imagine, players have business interests outside football for when they retire. You can imagine Eden Hazard just popping up like in Brussels with Eden Hazard's like bakery and chocolate factory.
Shares in Mr. Kipling.
Yeah. Or gets his full Willy Wonka outfit on. He's like, go on, lads.
Eden Hazard in a top hat riding around. Anyway, I think on that note, we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
And leave you with the thought of Willy Wonka dressed up like Eden Hazard.
Why would Willy Wonka have a Madrid shirt on?
I don't know. That's just the image I've got in my head is Willy Wonka with his top hat, a Hazard kit on, and a unicycle.
Fair
I don't know why he's got a unicycle either, because I'm pretty sure he doesn't ride one of those in the book.
Yeah,
We'll leave it
next
there.
time. Yeah.
And we'll be back at some point next week with 2 more podcasts. We'd love you to join us then. So we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.